Next up, while we tend to focus on her famous brothers, JFK, Bobby, and Ted, Eunice Kennedy Shriver was a force in her own right and then some, spearheading a movement for children and adults with intellectual disabilities and ultimately founding both the Special Olympics and the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, a branch of the NIH that now bears her name. This Saturday, on what would have been her 100th birthday, several organizations, including the Special Olympics of Massachusetts and the Eunice Kennedy Shriver Center at UMass Medical School, will be celebrating that legacy with the help of her son and longtime Special Olympics chair, Timothy Shriver, who joins me now. Tim, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for being willing to join in this celebration of an extraordinary woman.
Well, let's talk about that extraordinary woman. Almost all of us know her, of course, for the Special Olympics. Tell us a little bit about what we may not know.
Well, what I think a lot of people don't know is that from a very early age, really from birth, my mom had a sister with an intellectual disability. They, as you point out, know the stories of President Kennedy, of my uncle Bobby Kennedy, and certainly of Senator Kennedy for those around these days, but they don't necessarily know what an important role Rosemary played. A person who couldn't fit in, didn't keep up in school, didn't give speeches, didn't write books, but inspired my mother and her brothers to see human rights, to see the inclusion of those who are vulnerable as a central conviction of their lives. So my mom spent the better part of 70 years in a human rights campaign on behalf of people who I think of as almost the most forgotten and most oppressed minority on the planet, people like Rosemary who have an intellectual disability. She inspired scientists to do new research. She inspired medical doctors to provide care to mothers and children. She inspired scholars to research the supports and educational strategies that we would need as a country. And she inspired, of course, the Special Olympics, which we all know, but I hope we understand to be such a powerful shift in our national consciousness, because in those athletes, I think our whole country all of a sudden saw not just people with a label, but people. Not just athletes, but people of dignity and courage and bravery, and not just people who were competing, but people who deserved, who were entitled to an education, to housing, to employment, to a chance. So in some ways, behind every little step in this whole chain of shift and change in our culture towards the inclusion of people with intellectual disabilities, I'm proud and so honored to say my mom was there.
Well, you know, you left out one inspiration from what I read. She also inspired President Kennedy to sign the first major piece of legislation on these issues shortly before he died. You know, I read a couple of years ago, and I had her on the show, Eileen McNamara wrote a biography of your mother. And one line that I will never forget, she said she, obviously your mother, left behind the Kennedy family's most profound and lasting legacy. When you hear those words, what do you say to yourself?
What makes my skin tingle, honestly, it's so moving to think that a woman, you know, who was told she couldn't be like the boys, that she couldn't be in politics, she couldn't be successful, that she, in some ways relegated to a secondary position, used the power, the vulnerability, the brutal courage she was able to muster to fight the system in so many ways that ultimately I think will vindicate her as an equal to her brothers. And as a great American, I don't think, you know, she never wanted to eclipse her brothers. She didn't want to be better. I think she just wanted to make her country better. And right now, I think she's a great role model for people who want to make our country better. That one person, yes, she had many advantages, but she used those advantages primarily to fight against exclusion and to make her country better. And I hope Eileen's right that 100 years from now, people will look back on the great Americans of the 20th century, and they'll include my mom, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, among them.
You know, we all know the Special Olympics, I think, founded in '68. I think it was roughly '68. But before that, if I remember correctly, its predecessor was Camp Shriver in your backyard in the early '60s. You were a little kid. What was it like seeing all this day camp thing happening, unlike anything before it, right in your home?
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm grateful that I was 3, 4, 5 years old. I was a camper. Before we have what we now call unified sports, there was Camp Shriver. And people without disabilities and people with disabilities. We played kickball together. We went on pony rides together. We did obstacle courses together. As far as I was concerned, at a young age, it was just that my backyard was turned into a amusement park. But I remember the buses coming. They came from the institutions every morning. And I remember the flag being raised. And I remember wondering in the back of my, where were these kids coming from? Why were they on that bus? Where did they go when they went home? I would only find out later that they were coming from really quite horrible places, that their smiles were probably smiles that almost no one had ever seen outside those institutions, that the chance that they had to play was maybe the first time in their lives to run around on a field and be cheered and taught skills. So, it was one of those moments in which you could see what my mom believed, where all the action was downtown at the White House when my uncle was president. She was in the swimming pool with children who were forgotten by everyone, and demanding in some ways by her own actions that the world see them and respect and welcome them.
So we only have a minute left. What if people join you and your colleagues on Saturday, what will they witness? What will they see?
Well, I hope they'll learn the story of one woman's vision, one woman's power to change. They'll learn the story of how to take anger and turn it into action. They'll learn the story of what faith actually looks like in action. They'll learn the story of how a family can be a coherent and strong whole, that my mom's love for her sister inspired her love and her determination to change the world. And they'll learn that they can still get involved, that the Special Olympics movement needs them now. We're coming out of this horrible pandemic. It has devastated the lives of people with intellectual disabilities inequitably. We have to change the medical system, change education, change housing, change employment, and we can play our way into doing that. Our challenge right now is to get back on the playing field and welcome our community back to full inclusion in the life of their country.
Boy, are you your mother's son, Tim Shriver. It's good to see you.
I'm so proud of her. I'm just so proud of her. I'm so lucky.
It's pretty clear.
Honestly.
Tim, we were lucky to have her. Thanks so much. We'll look forward to Saturday. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.